Hello and welcome back to Scale Down Customs. This is going to be part 4 of the Pagani Huayra build. So we're going to be working on the body, and hopefully we'll get this thing finished up in this video and assembled for the final showing. So for the body, there are a ton of pieces that I'm going to need to be painting, and because I'm doing a two-tone color, I'm going to need to kind of paint this all at the same time so the hue kind of matches up with the panels that I'm going to be putting together. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge on this paint job, and I guess that's why I saved this for last, because I'm the most afraid of it. But anyway, so we're going to get some of these parts cleaned up and into primer and start figuring out which pieces go where and how this thing is going to come together and ready for some paint. So let's start cleaning up the pieces. So this kit really doesn't have very many mold lines. In fact, they're kind of hidden in the roll seams right there. So there's not going to be a lot of work that needs to go into this, but there is just a little bit of a mold line there, so I do want to smooth that off a little bit. So I'm just going to use my magic marker as a guide coat and get some of those mold lines identified. Generally, you see me rubbing my finger across it, so generally on the mold lines you'll feel a little bit of an edge, and honestly I'm barely feeling that on these, so I'm not even sure if this is a mold line, but if it is, they've done a really good job on these mold lines. They're almost non-existent. So that's what I'm doing with my fingers, just kind of feeling around for some sharp edges. Since these lines are just barely there and they're on a curve, I just want to smooth them off just a little bit, and you can see where the sandpaper is hitting that raised edge. So I just want to smooth that off just a little bit. What I'm using is just the Tamiya. This is just their 600 grit sanding sponge. And then while I'm sanding these mold lines down, I am going to go ahead and hit the rest of the body just to smooth that off, rough it up a little bit for some for the primer to adhere to it a little bit better. Now on this one, the reason I cut these pieces a little bit farther away from the body is because I don't want to take the chance of, when it's on the sprue, of having my cutters be forced into the body and cutting those a little bit deeper into the body than I want them. So it just kind of relieves a little bit of the stress or the tension when you cut them away a little bit away from the sprue, and then you can cut them a little bit closer to the body, a little bit more smoothly without it being pushed into the body. So just a little tip on that. Alright, I got all my body pieces cleaned up and ready for primer. Got all the mold lines taken care of. I got all the ejection pin marks sanded down where they would be visible. And since the hood and the trunk, you can open them up so then you can see the underside. I have to be a little bit strategic on how I put my sticks on for painting. So we'll get these sticked up and ready for some primer. Alright, once again for my primer, just Mr. Surface 1000 with Mr. Color Thinner 110 to thin it down, and I usually mix it down about 1:1 for this. So let's go spray some primer. Alright, so I got my body parts in gray primer, but since I'm using a light color on this, I want it in white primer, so I'll get a more brilliant finish on my color. But I also forgot that this needs to be body color as well, these two pieces here on this part. So I'm gonna sand these down and just use the gray primer as a guide coat just to make sure everything's nice and smooth. And then we're gonna mask this off and then spray everything in white primer. And I'll just be using the Tamiya white primer for that. So for my sanding, I'm just gonna dry sand with the Tamiya 600 grit sanding sponge. Alright, never mind, I am going to wet sand. So I'll be just using a bucket of water, still the 600 grit sanding sponge, and then maybe some my sanding sticks here, my emery boards, just to get a flat sand on some of these pieces. You can see already that that's sanded right through there, which means that's a raised edge. So I want that nice and flat. And the water just kind of helps to keep the primer from building up in the sandpaper and the sanding sticks and stuff. Alright, so I got all my pieces in white primer, so we just need to go over it with some 3000 grit sandpaper just to take off any dust spots or imperfections and just give it a real nice smooth up finish. And then we'll go spray some paint on there. Alright, I think we're finally ready to spray some color. So the color I have chosen is Gravity Colors USA, the Pagani Rosa Dubai. And this is a two-part paint. As you can see, this is the base color, and then this is kind of a clear transparent color that's going to go over the top of it. The trick with these is you have to get this overcoat on there pretty evenly. It's like a candy or anything else. The more you add, the darker it goes. So the trick is I have these louvers that fit on the front and the back over the body like this, and there's nowhere to hold them. So I'm going to try to paint everything in the solid color first, and then I'm going to try to mock up somehow. Maybe I'll tape it somewhere so that I get an even coat with this transparent. So all my panels will be matching. Anyway, so that's my plan. We'll see how it actually works out. But let's go spray the base coat first and see where we're at after that. Alright, so this is what I came up with for painting the transparent color to kind of get an even coat on everything. So let's see if this sticks on here enough and these pieces don't fall off as I'm moving it around and spraying on it. But let's go spray the transparent color and see how we do on that. Wow, that color is amazing. I really like that color. Even just the base coat is just beautiful. But it went on really thick and it started drying before it made contact. So I've got some spots that are really rough, especially the hood. You can see how I'm getting a lot of powdering going on up here, and this is really textury. So that's not gonna do. I love the color though. That color is amazing. But that texturing is not gonna work. So in the stripper tub, these pieces are going to go. And one other thing I realized is I'm not gonna paint these in body color. I'm gonna leave them in the carbon fiber graphite. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna two-tone paint this. So this will be carbon fiber graphite, as well as the top piece going into the back of it and the top half of these doors as they come in. Let me get the right one. As they come into this seam right there, the top half of the doors will be carbon fiber graphite. As they go into the back area here like that, and then finish out on the back. So this whole top layer will be carbon fiber graphite, so it'll be a two-tone paint job. So I'm gonna unmask this, respray that carbon fiber graphite, strip these down, and get everything repainted back up. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn down my air pressure. That was at 20 psi. I'm gonna turn my pressure down to about 20, and then I'm gonna thin this down a little bit with some of the Gravity Colors thinner. So we'll give that a shot. All right, so I've got her painted back up with the second transparent coat on there, and you can really see, if I turn this over, the difference on that. So this is the first color of the Gravity Colors Pagani Rosa Dubai, and you can see it's got a good metallic base on there. And then once you get just a couple coats, I think I went a little too dark, especially on the hood down towards the front. I was trying to blend that in a little bit more, and of course, like I always do, I went a little too heavy on the front, so it's a little darker. I tried to go with that front bumper a little bit, but I don't think that's going to match up, so that's going to be a little off. But anyway, so that's the second color, the transparent, kind of the red clear or the red candy or whatever. And that really makes that red metallic pop. I mean, that is just beautiful. I love that color. All right, so we're almost ready to clear. And before I do that, I need to put a couple decals on right back there, and then we'll be ready for some clear coat. So I just have my coffee warmer here that I'm just using to kind of keep my water a little bit warm. And then I'll be using a little micro set just to kind of give a little bit of a base for these decals to set onto. Alright, we're going to let these little decals dry out because I don't want any moisture in there when I start trying to clear it. So we'll let those dry, and then we'll be ready for some clear coat. Alright, so I got 2 coats of the Gravity Colors 2K Clear on there, and we're letting those panels dry up. or cure. It's going to take probably 2 to 3 days, 3 days just to be safe. I can tell I've already got some dust spots in there, so I'm going to need to be sanding and polishing that out. So in order to do that, I need it to be fully cured. So in the meantime, we're going to move on to masking and painting the windows and then doing some more assembly while we're waiting for our clear parts to dry up. So I'm just going to cut out these handy masks for the windows that Aoshima has provided with their kits, and then we'll get these on the windows and get those painted up. All right, just doing a rough cut on those because these are going to peel out, and I just wanted to give myself a little bit more working room to get to the masks. All right, got all the masks on there, and now I want to put some tape on the backside just to protect that from any overspray. To do that, I'll just be using some Tamiya masking tape. All right, got everything ready for some black trim paint. For that, I'm just going to be using the Tamiya Semi-Gloss Black, and I'll thin this down probably 1:1 and spray that on. All right, got the black trim sprayed on there, and then I want to get these masks off, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a tint on some of these, actually almost all the windows except for the front windshield and the side windows. Well, look at that, I just cracked the front windshield. Outstanding. Alright, so I'm going to let this black dry off a little bit more because I want to mask off and do a little sunshade fade on that. Ah, that's really disappointing. Alright, moving forward. Alright, so here's the deal with the only part that I can't fix if I break it on the entire kit. I did find another replacement kit online for almost $90, which is not going to work. And I contacted my local hobby store, MRS Hobbies, and they do have one that's on order, so I attached my name to it, but it's been on order since February. So here's the deal. I'm going to move ahead with the build and get this thing completed as if that crack never happened. Get this thing finished up, and then I guess if I ever get to find a replacement, then I'll try to kind of experiment with a couple things on how we can address that. I've got a couple ideas, or at least one idea that I want to try, but it might destroy the windshield, so yeah, I kind of want to wait till I have a replacement for that. So anyway, moving ahead, I'm going to get this thing taped off, and then we're going to go and tint the rest of these windows and start installing some stuff. So I'm just going to use a little Tamiya fine line masking tape to just kind of get a little bit of a curve, and then we'll tape the rest of that off with the actual Tamiya masking tape. So I get that masked up and we're ready for some paint. So I'm just going to be using the Tamiya smoke for that, and I'll thin this down probably 1:1 as well. Sunshade turned out pretty good, I think, except for I left the tape on there a little bit too long, so I've got a little bit of a harsher line there, but that turned out pretty good. All right, so the tint turned out pretty good. You can see just a little bit of a tint there compared to the side window. All right, so now I'm going to put a black border around all the glass, and to do that I'm going to be using my black Gundam paint marker. All right, here's the deal. I'm going to cut this video off here because this is taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to. There's just a ton of pieces. Had a couple setbacks. So I'm going to cut the video off here so I can get this thing edited and uploaded for you guys to see. And then I'll keep working on getting this thing finished up, and hopefully the next video, the final video, won't take as long. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for the next one.